What's up, people? Today we're going to be building a DIY home arcade system right after this. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Kedrick Foster. I do unboxings and reviews of all the latest tech. So if you like that type of content, hit that like and that subscribe button. So if you've seen my man cave tour video, you've probably seen the home arcade that I built in my basement. Today, I'm going to show you how to build one. A lot of people have been asking for a tutorial in the comments. So today we're going to be building a smaller version that I'm going to put in the kids' playroom. This is going to be a little bit unique because I'm going to try something different that I haven't seen before. I want to actually try to wall mount this. So it's going to be a low profile. I'm trying to have it low profile so it doesn't stick out too far. So my plan is to have it no more than a foot out from the wall, which seems like it might be impossible, but I'm gonna make it work. So we want to have it a foot out from the wall, and I'm going to have it wall mounted. So let's get started. So what you can see here already that I have already drew out a template for how I want to do it. And at its widest point here is 1 foot. So I measured the size of the TV. I'm actually going to use an old 32-inch TV that I have as the monitor. And of course, just like the other one, it's going to be using the Raspberry Pi as far as like the computer system that's going to run everything. So I have this template drawn out, and all we have to do now is go ahead and cut the first side out. And after we cut the first side out, we're going to trace it onto another board and cut the second half out. So let's get to it. So now we have the side frame of the arcade. If you can see here, I have a little notch. This is where I'm going to rest it on a 2x4, and I'm going to have another mounting point on the inside where I can mount it that'll support the weight of this. So this is one side. Now all we got to do is go ahead and trace it and cut the other side out. All right, so now all I'm doing is sitting this on top of another board, tracing it, and then going ahead and cutting it out. So we're gonna go ahead and take this, we're gonna trace it out. I would recommend doing this with a pencil, because if you get a marker or like a crayon, it's gonna be a little bit bigger than the original. So with a sharp point pencil, you can get a lot more accurate on your lines. Okay, so now we have our two sides, and now we have to do the back, the front, and the top. So we're just gonna measure how wide the TV is, make sure the TV can fit in between these. Make sure you measure this part, because once it's together, it's not coming apart. So make sure you get a good measurement on the TV or the monitor that you're going to be using, and make sure it's going to be able to fit between these two panels. All right, so my measurement for this particular TV is 28 3/4. Make sure you measure this part because it's going to vary depending on what TV you use. And this is a very important measurement, because if not, your TV won't fit, like I said before. So I'm gonna go ahead and start my cut. Cut it the short way, and then I have to get another piece that's gonna be 5 1/2. And I'm gonna show you where that goes. All right, so we got our piece that's 30, what was it again? 28 3/4. that. So now we need to cut a strip, which is 5.5. Now, of course, if you have a better variety of tools than I have, then this will be a little bit easier for you because you could use like a table saw. But I'm just using what I got right now. Stuff I'm using is stuff most of y'all probably already have in your tool collection. So I'm not using any fancy tools. This is all stuff you probably already have, and if not, it's something you can get that's not that expensive. So. Alright, so now that I have this strip cut, let me show you where it goes. Alright, so this piece will attach to the top like this, and then I'll connect this side like that. And then we'll do the bottom. So what I'm gonna use is, I'm just gonna use this wood glue. You can use any kind you want. This is coming up some of the brands that I use, but any wood glue would do. And then I'm gonna go back and tack it in with some finishing nails just to hold it. And then I think later on, I'll go back and actually put some screws in it. We're gonna go ahead and make the bottom 10 inches. I'm gonna leave some space for the 2x4 that I'm gonna have it resting on when I mount it. So I'm gonna make the bottom about 10 inches wide. And this leftover scrap piece, I'm just gonna put it on the back side just to give it a little bit of added support. So drop it down here on the back side. Right about. I'm gonna bring it down to the bottom, right there. Yeah, that looks good. Drop some glue on it. So now we're going to cut the front panel of the cabinet. That's going to be 29 3/4 by 9.5. Put our glue on. As you can see, the cabinet is starting to come together, starting to take its shape. See here? Now, the interesting part is we're going to put the top panel on where the buttons and everything are going to go. So we're going to have to lay that out and drill some holes for the buttons. And that's how it's going to look. So I'm going to sit this down again, let this dry a little bit, let some of this glue dry. We're going to take this board here and cut where the buttons will go. Alright, so I printed out a template online of how I want the buttons laid out, so I'm going to go ahead and grab that, transfer that onto this board, and then get to drilling. Alright, so I got these templates for the buttons that I want to use. So I'm going to use a 6-button setup. I'm going to trim this up a little bit and try to transfer it on. So in order to make this low profile, I had to shorten the size of this board. So what I want to do is I want to have these towards the top of the board, like somewhere about there. That way I still have room to rest my palms when I'm playing. So I don't want to have it down here and I'll have nowhere to rest my palms. So I'm try to have them up here somewhere. That way I still have room on the board to rest my hands when I'm playing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find my spot, which I think that looks good. Somewhere around there. Then I'll have room in the, I'll either have room here for the pause and the start and select buttons, or have room for them inside here somewhere. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and glue these down in place. I don't need a lot of glue, just something to hold it in place. I think I want about right there, looks good. There probably should be some more scientific way to do this, but I think this will work. Let's try and match them up, make sure they look about the same. And now I'm gonna go ahead and actually grab one of the buttons just to make sure the hole that I drill is the proper size. So I'll be right back. All right, so if you can see, this is one of the buttons. Let's see if it will focus on it. There you go. So that's one of the buttons. It's actually one of the ones with the LED lights inside, so it'll glow. And I just want to make sure the hole that I drill is big enough to fit the button through. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna find my drill bit that I'm gonna use and make sure it'll fit. And this one right here looks pretty good. And this is a 1 1/8 bit. This is just 1 inch, so that's small. Yeah, so I'm gonna go with this bit. And then I'm gonna go ahead and start drilling these holes. Alright, so I got all that to my liking. And I'm gonna see if I can get it drilled. So what I'm probably gonna have to do is just start the hole on each one and then take this off. Because if I try to do the whole drill, it's gonna move the paper. Alright, so I got the first layer of paint on it. Then I'm gonna go ahead and put some tape lines on it, try to put a little design on it, and then I'm gonna give it the second coat with a different color. Alright, so now I got my little design in it that I'm gonna go over top with a next coat of paint. I'm gonna use like a navy blue. Alright, so now that I got that sprayed down, I'm gonna let that sit and let it dry, and we'll go on to the next part. Alright, so now that the board is done, now it's time to put the buttons in. So as you can see here, the board is dry. Yeah, I've already placed one button in, and I'm gonna put the rest in. Alright, so now that we got all of the buttons in, as you can see here, move this out, right? Alright, so now you see we have all the buttons in. Now we're gonna go back and screw them in on the back side. So they come with this little plastic ring. You're gonna take that on the back side and screw it in place. Alright, so now we got all the buttons in. I got the controllers in. Let me show you how they connected on the back side. So if you see, they, like I showed you earlier, they just got the screws for each button that holds it in place. And then for the actual joysticks, you're gonna have to actually go out and buy some screws and bolts to hold these in place. And they screw in and bolt from the bottom side, if you can see that. And then on the top, it has this black disc that will cover the hole that you drill. So these holes, like I said earlier, are going to be the same size as the button hole. So, and that gives it room to move in all directions. So we're going to flip this over so you can see how you connect this. So each button has a slot. If you can see here, that's a white slot. You're going to take one of these cords, and if one goes to each button. And then you're going to take this module. It's a USB module, so each button plugs into this module, and then it's connected via USB to the actual Raspberry Pi, which I have here. Actually, I might not use this one, but you get the picture. So this is the Raspberry Pi. So this is the system that runs all the arcade machines. Just this little one board machine. And all of this comes with the kit, with the buttons and the joysticks. I'll have all this linked down in the description if you want to grab it. So let's get to hooking it up. And one thing I forgot to add, each board goes to one player. So there's two separate boards that come in this pack. This one will go to the red buttons, or player one, and then there's a separate one for player two. So don't cross buttons. You make sure all the red are going to one board, and the second one is here. So it'll be red into this board, blue into that board. Now when you're hooking these up, it doesn't matter what order. Make sure they're all hooked up. When you actually boot up the system, you can go in and map the buttons. So it doesn't matter what order you hook these up in, just as long as they're all hooked up to the correct board. Okay, so now everything's hooked up. You see here, we got all the buttons connected, and they're both wired into their individual controller boards. And then once we have the actual Raspberry Pi set up, we'll wire these directly into the Raspberry Pi using the included USB cable. So now what we got to do is go ahead and get this mounted on the actual cabinet, and then the next step after that is we'll be installing the Retro Pi on the Raspberry Pi. So be right back. Alright, so now that I got the keyboard on, we're going to add some LEDs to the top marquee so we can have a little bit of accent lighting on the arcade. These lights I got from Just LED. They were kind enough to send these out for this project. So if you want to check them out, they support the channel, so please go out there and support them. I had these linked in the description. Alright, so now that I got the LEDs in, and we're going to attach this marquee at the top. It's pretty simple. I had something a lot more involved in this, but Staples wouldn't print it due to copyright reasons, so I'm going to have to go with this for right now. So we're going to just lay this over top of the marquee, use some trim pieces to put it in place, and after that we're going to be actually ready to install the Raspberry Pi with Retro Pi. So let's just throw this on real quick so we can get to the next step. Alright people, we're coming down the home stretch. So now we're going to go over the actual Raspberry Pi itself. So this is the actual single board computer. We're just going to go around the actual ports it has on it. Has a HDMI out, as you can see here. And then if you look on the side, it has an Ethernet in and 4 USBs. This also has built-in Bluetooth and built-in wireless internet. So not that you're going to need that, because we're going to load everything on to a micro SD card. So what you do is, I'm not going to break down everything. I'm going to actually leave a link to a full tutorial on how to do this. It's a real simple process, but basically what you do is you download a program called Raspberry Pi Imager, and what that does is it burns the actual software onto this micro SD card, and then you put that SD card into your Raspberry Pi, and then once you boot it up, you're all set to go. All you have to do after that is start adding your games. So I'll leave a link in the description for a full tutorial on that. I don't want to have this video be an hour long, so that's basically what you do with this. So as I showed you earlier when we did the controller board, it had the 2 USB adapter boards. What you're going to do with that is plug them both into one of these 4 USBs, and that's how you're going to be actually able to program and control the actual game system. Now if you look here, it has a audio out as well. Now I'm going to just be using a sound coming from the TV speakers, but if you did want to use some external speakers with your arcade setup, you do have an audio out jack. I'm just going to use the sound that's coming straight through the HDMI out, so I'm just going to be using the sound from the TV. And then also if you look here, there's a little slot there, and that's where you actually insert your micro SD card. And then if you look here on this side, there's a micro USB slot that you use for your power. So with all that being explained, we're going to get this mounted up on the wall and we're going to see it in action. Alright, so now I got it mounted on the wall in the kids' playroom. I let them go crazy with the stickers on it, but it's their thing. So let me just go over some of the stuff that were some optional upgrades that I did to the machine that I didn't record earlier. So if you can see, and you might have seen it earlier in the video, that this controller board has like a gloss finish on it. So what I did was, after I painted it, I went over top of it with some epoxy. Again, that's totally optional. You don't need to do that, but I figured this would be a surface that I want to be able to wipe down. And you know, normally using regular paint, just the regular paint surface, it's not going to be the best surface to wipe down or whatever. So I put some epoxy on it. That added a whole couple days to the process, so I didn't want to include that in the video because that's really optional. And then I went ahead and got this marquee printed. Actually got this printed at Staples, something really basic. I did have something a lot more involved with a bunch of characters on it, but due to copyright problems, they would not print it, so I had to go ahead and get this done. But I also have like some LED lights behind this as well. So let's go ahead and power it up, and I'm gonna show you how it looks and how you configure your buttons. But let me show you how you actually set up your controller. So like I told you earlier, when you plug it into the actual controller board, you have to go in and map each button. So I'm turning this, I got to turn the light down so you can actually see this a little bit better. But you're going to go into configure input. Say, are you sure you want to configure input? I'm not sure if y'all can see this, so I'm repeating everything. But it says, are you sure you want to configure input? Yeah, yes. It says 2 game paths detected. So press and hold the A button on your device to configure it. So we're gonna make this first button here, the A button. We're gonna press and hold it. And now it says each command. So it says press up on the D-pad, press down on the D-pad, left, right, etc. And when you do each of those, it's gonna program the actual button to the function. So let's do that. All right, so we got Sega CD, 32X, Super Nintendo, Turbo Graphics, Vectrex, more games than I have ever even heard of. And we got Atari Classics, fighting games, Capcom, Castlevania, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Super Mario Collection, Metroid, Midway, Nintendo Classics, Sega Classics. So there's a lot of games bundled into collections, and then there's also just actual systems. So if I go down, it'll just go to the actual system. So you have like Atari, ColecoVision, Daphne, Dreamcast, Game & Watch, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance. You know, so it pretty much cycles through all the systems. And I want to say the latest system may be either PlayStation, Dreamcast, or Nintendo 64. So, and if you want to go into play a game, let's go ahead to Super Nintendo. And we're going to look for Super Mario. Also, I forgot to tell you how I actually mounted it. So I told you before that I had to cut the little notch in it. I'll show you a pop-up on this video now of how I had a 2x4. I shot a 2x4 into the wall, into the studs. One at the bottom, one at the top. So this machine is actually resting on that 2x4. I drilled that into the wall, and then I drilled this into that 2x4 on the bottom and at the top. So as you can see, it's sturdy, it's not going nowhere. Alright, so that's going to be the end for this video. I know this was a long one. I had a lot of stuff I had to fit in here. But if you have any questions about anything I had in the video, just drop them down in the comment section. I'll be sure to get to them. Also, I'll have the links to the Raspberry Pi, the button kit, and anything else you need to make this happen. Also the links to the video to show you how to install Raspberry Pi onto the SD card. And what else do you need to know? That's it. So I want to thank y'all for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this. Until the next time, peace out.